Hey guys, so I'm doing more jelly printing. I'm just preparing some pages that I'm going to cut up. And I had a little bit of blue left over from the last print I did, which was all blue. So I'm just kind of cleaning up the briar and getting the paint on my paper. And I will be working with this paper. But I want to get some other colors on top, and I'm doing like monochromatic color schemes here, which will be my workable pieces so that I could use them on top of my prepared journal pages. So when I do monochromatic color schemes, I just pick a couple different colors or tones of one color. So in this case, I'm doing greens. And I do have a little bit of blues down on here, which is totally fine because it just adds a little bit of surprise when you're looking at the greens, and it is a tertiary color, which means it's next to blue on the color wheel. So it works really nice if you're doing a monochromatic color scheme, and there's just a little hint of that. Sorry, not tertiary. Oh, I'm getting all my terms mixed up. Analogous, which means it's next to each other. So what I do is I want this all to be tones of green underneath. So I'm going to use various green colors along with a neutral, which is like a cream or a white. I'll put a little bit of emerald. And I've got peridot. So I've got yellow green light, emerald green, and a peridot. And I'll mix that in with like a cream or white after. So what I like to do is use my briar, use the paint on the briar to get all my page covered, because I'm working with such a little plate. I've got to use multiple pulls to get, the whole texture on the page. So I use a technique where, and I'm moving a little fast here because my paint dries. When I'm using textures, I'll use my template that I just placed onto the jelly plate to go over the lighter color green. And I just keep building up my page. So I'll go over and over and over and over and over the pages until it's completely solid. So let me try and show you this step slower. Okay. So I have a little bit of that emerald green here. I'm going to use this yellow green light over top. I'm just going to go over the whole thing here. And then what I like to do with the leftover color is just kind of like do the edges. I go over. And I'll go over and over the pages multiple times because I want to make sure that it's covered. And then I'm going to place my template on top and just kind of, this is where if you don't have nails, get the tip of a skewer or back of a pencil or something just to kind of poke down. And then now it's pulled up paint over here. So I'll take this pattern and I'll put it over a darker piece to kind of get that texture. It's very subtle. It's light, but you can see. And then I just keep building up and building up. So I'm going to press this plate down. And then I'll alternate using light colors and dark colors. And as you go, it's kind of picking up, you know, areas of paint over here, the lights and the darks. This is Spanish moss. So I'm going to use moss this time. And I think I'll put a little bit of this emerald green with it as well. Okay. So I'll get that down. And again, I'm just doing the same technique so you don't get confused. So I put the paint on my jelly plate. I get my stencil down. And you can use any stencil. When I lift my stencil up, there's paint on it. And I'll go over another section of my paper to transfer a little bit of that pattern on here. See that? And then this plate, I'll flip over and do another section. It doesn't matter if there's paint on it. You're just totally building up pages. So I'm just going to keep doing this until my whole page is covered with paint. And it doesn't look like I just slapped down a bunch of prints. And then what I do, I'll just put some of this paint, is some of the excess paint, I'll just kind of, you know, work in a bit, overlap to kind of blend those edges. And it is a process and it does take a while. So let me show you now how. So I put some excess paint on here. I'm going to put my stencil on top. And then I'm going to use my light green. And then I'm going to take some cream, just a little bit. And we're going to blend this in. So we're just constantly building. Okay, now I'm going to take the stencil here and I am going to place it on my paper, roll. So you're doing the same technique, but this time you're really getting quite a bit of paint on the stencil. And then this yummy print, I'm going to put over in the corner over here. So I just keep building up my page this way. And then I end up with, you know, some, and I'll do this in a number of different colors. So I've done a blue one. I've done orange tones. That way, when I go to do the pages, I can use my designs to contrast one another. So one could be the page, and one could be the paper I'm using for collaging or whatever it is. So I'm just going to use a little bit of this green to go over the edges, work my edges. Okay. So then I've got a little bit of a pattern left here on my page. And now what I'm going to do is, I'll use my Peridot along with, this is the one I was using, the cream. So I always like to incorporate a neutral, like a white or cream. Oops. I'm just going to press this on top. We're doing the same thing. Template. And then you see where you might want a little bit, like over here, it's nice and dark. So I'll use the white to get more texture or more contrast. So I've got my design starting to pop out there. And then what I'm going to do here is you can see through the back side, there's a little bit of green left. So I find it's pretty, you know, nothing interesting much going over there. So I will add this component in the corner. And I really want all of that yummy goodness underneath, like all that green to come through and pull up. So you have to just kind of let that paint dry underneath. So I like to just rub. And I'll test. It's still quite wet. And then we get a little bit of design there. And then what I'll do to kind of break it up so it's not all looking like a bunch of plates is I'll set my template on top. I'll kind of match it with one of the squares, and then I'll briar a little bit of that lighter color over top so it looks like it's, you know, bleeding into the rest of the design. I'll show you in a second here what it ends up looking like. Just like so. And then I get a nice little blending of all the different tones, but I've got different designs and different textures. So that's my green one. And that's how I do it. So I did green, I did blue, I did an orange in one of my other videos. So now let me show you how I'm going to do a multicolor one. So again, I always just try to clean my briar off with whatever is left underneath. And whoops. I've got this nice, yummy, light green underneath. So I'm going to try and add a little bit of pink, and we'll try to pop it up. I think I'll add a little bit of this blue as well. Actually, let's do the dark blue. And then I'll just briar out some of the color on my paper and get some blue on there. And just briar it out. And this is how I ensure, you know, there's not going to be any white left over. I want to add a little more pink over here. Just get the excess off on the paper. And we're going to press down. Now remember, there was a little bit of that green and white left underneath that I'm hoping will pop up on here. If not, we just work it and add more paint until it eventually pulls with one of our next pulls, because it'll eventually come up. Okay, I think that's good. Oh yeah. And see how the green came up on that? How pretty. And then all this extra paint that just kind of seeped on the side, I will mix up like that. Okay, so let's get, oh, why I seem to really be running out of white paint here. So let's use some gray. Use some gray. Use some light pink. And some patina. So I'm going pastel with this one. Okay, I gotta use a different stencil here. Some more down here. Oh, let's see what I have. Oh, I have a man. Well, I'll use this one. I like this. Okay. So let's get some of this dark blue. Well, let's do a stamp first. We'll try to pull a bit off. And then we'll get the dark blue down. Okay, so we got a little bit there. Okay, so I'm going to get some dark blue in here. Way more than I wanted. Just get the excess off. Okay, so here we can have a little bit of fun getting this print down in the corner. How pretty is that? Whoops. Try to get a little bit more off down here if we can. And this is going to be dark. So I'm going to attach it to the one in the center here, going across. Look how pretty that is. And I've got another pull here. So put one next to it. And then you get the extra that off here. Just bring some of the blue up. So you can see how just reworking your page over and over, the different designs and texture that you get. Now I want to pull a little bit more, some different tones in here. So, hang on. Checking out my stencils I've got going. Okay. A little bit of this tourmaline and my patina. Get my stencil down. Okay, I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to lay it down on my paper. Use my briar. And just constantly building up texture. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the sides along here. Oops. And then I'll do it along the bottom. And I'm just literally going to keep working this paper over and over and over. I'm going to get the excess off. There's still some really pretty pattern here. So I'm going to get my stencil on here. And this time I'm just going to do patina on one side and tourmaline on the other, but I'm not going to blend the colors because I want them to be apparent. So you'll just run one color first. Patina. I think I'll need some more. I just really want the pattern to stick out. Okay, that's good. Get some excess off. And then get my pink over here. Okay. Going into low tone voice again, you guys, because I'm all focused. Okay, and then you could take some of this pattern and again, and you don't have to like make sure the whole pattern's on your paper. But I just really like reworking and reworking the stencils until I get, you know, what I really want. I'm not afraid to go over the paper. Because in the end, I don't know if I'm going to use this as a sheet in my journal or I'm just going to take components out of it. So I'm really just prepping, you know, paper. So I'm kind of liking this the way it is. I don't want to do too much work on it. I've got all the little colors that I like. There's a little bit of red in there, pink, blue. Yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it as that. And then when I cut pieces out, I can use sections. So that's another way to use the stencil with your jelly printing. And then I'm going to show you how you can use these papers and cut them up to make, you know, embellishments or continue journaling in your art. which is what I find a lot of artists are having a hard time with is, oh, how do I use this now? I made it this far, but now they have them as pages in their journal and they don't want to cover it up, but they find it needs a little more. So I'm going to go through with you guys and show you how you can do that. Okay, cool. We'll see you soon.